finish up talking about growth, talking about being a growing community and growing together and what it looks like to grow. And so something that you should know about me is I'm a growth-oriented person. I am, if there's something that kind of really kind of irks me or gets stuck in my craw, so to speak, it's the idea of status quo. I think status quo is the opposite of growth. That status quo, well, I looked it up because it's kind of a weird term. The definition of status quo is the existing or current state of things or affairs as they are. So there's a status quo in your family, there's a status quo in your personal life, there's a status quo in your workplace, and in church also, the current state of things the way they are. And oftentimes, there's a temptation or maybe a kind of a pressure to keep things status quo. Or maybe I would say even to get stuck in status quo rather than grow and keep moving forward. And so, as a church, we're about being a growing community and have been since the beginning of this experiment. And this is kind of, for me personally, at least this resonates with me because I like the idea of growing and moving forward. And it's not always a numerical thing. It's not always a numerical growth thing. It can, status quo can apply to our attitudes. Very much an attitude can be this, the way it is, it's good enough. My attitude is this is just good enough. It can apply to areas where we serve or areas of our work where we're saying, I know this isn't great. This isn't the best I could do. I know there's more, but this'll do. This is good enough. That's kind of the definition of status quo. And I believe that growth and growing, what we're talking about today, is the opposite of status quo. Now, here's my personal confession. And as I'm sure it is yours, because we're all human, I've slipped into status quo mode from time to time in my life. I would say even especially recently in my life. And I don't know about you, but when I get into status quo, like when I hear myself saying to myself or battling the mental temptation to just say it's good enough. It is what it is. It's good enough. It feels yucky to me. I don't know about to you, but when I hear myself saying it's good enough, when I hear, maybe our organizational culture saying it's good enough, when I hear somebody else saying, I could do a lot better, but this is good enough, that just creates an ick inside of me. It feels yucky, and it feels a lot like something that I think is synonymous with status quo, and that's stagnation. A stagnant pool is or a stagnant pond is yucky. We have a pool at our house, and when we first looked at the house to buy it, the pool was crystal clear. And we're like, it was part of the big selling points of why we bought the house. And so we signed the contract, and then we went back to do the inspections, kind of like, well, we're in this thing, and the pool was not crystal clear anymore. It was more like stagnant and gross and yucky, and the real estate agent was like, I don't know what happened. And I'm like, I do. They shut the filter off. The water stopped moving and going forward and got yucky. Another time I've experienced kind of a difference of stagnation when I think of the yuck of status quo or the yuck of stagnation. Some of you know I lived in Oklahoma for about 8 years, and what you may not know about Oklahoma if you've never lived there, and this is probably true of maybe other southern states like Texas or whatever, but the lakes in Oklahoma are not clear and cool and refreshing like lakes in Minnesota. They're brown and warm, and although they're used a lot for water sports and outdoor recreation, to me anyway, I'm sorry to all my Oklahoma friends who may listen to this, but it was like gross. It was like bath water warm. I mean, it's 105 degrees for 30 days straight in Oklahoma, so I get it, and it's clay soil, but everything that we're kind of privileged and blessed with as Minnesotans, like clear, running, crystal clear water, that's the difference. And in my mind, that's the difference of status quo and stagnation versus moving forward. Moving forward is clear and cool and at least for me, exciting and awesome, and stagnation is like Lake Winona in the middle of just green and gross. And a lot of that is because there's no movement, there's no in and there's no out of the water. And so it's just kind of a little bit yucky. And I think everything about stagnation, at least to me personally, whether as an individual or as an organization, is kind of gross. Something I think kind of we need to fight against. And stagnation avoidance, or the battle not to stagnate, not to stall, not to get comfortable in status quo for either an individual or an organization, is an ongoing thing that we battle. It's an ongoing thing that we have to work through. Every individual, whether you're a pastor or whether you're a teacher or whatever you do for a living, whether you're mom or dad, every individual has to fight this inward battle to just get comfortable with status quo. Now, certainly there's areas in our life where we say, you know what, I'm okay with this, I've reached this, but I'm talking in general, there's always places we can advance, always places we can move forward. And I think it's appropriate that we ask ourselves as individuals, how can I improve? How can I grow? How can I move forward? Maybe it has to do with fitness or finances or employment or spiritual growth or emotional growth or educational growth. There's always an opportunity to move forward, to do better. And I believe if a person doesn't ask, it's not enough just to ask, though, how can I do better, and answer and take action on these things, they have a tendency to stagnate. That's true for me anyway. An organization also needs to remain outwardly focused, needs to continue to grow and move forward, lest it stagnate. And I think, bringing it back to our Compass experiment, with regard to our experiment, Compass Church has done a fairly good job, I would say a very good job, of not stagnating in most areas, of not becoming yucky or inwardly focused or growth. And I'll give you some examples of places where I think we've done really well moving forward, remaining outwardly focused and keeping pushing. And one of those is community events. We've had some amazingly fun community events where we've said to our community, we're doing this for no other reason than to bless your socks off, for no other reason than to love on you. Events like Trunk or Treat and the Easter egg drop and the Ladies' Day Out and just on and on and on. We've done a really great job, I think, of not becoming stagnant in those areas. I think we've done a great job of having volunteer teams that serve on a constant and regular basis. I just want to give a shout out to our volunteer teams. You're enjoying coffee and having a cup holder next to you with all the stuff Pastor Rick said to look at and fill out because of a volunteer team that set this whole place up. There's great kids ministry happening just down the hallway because of volunteer teams. We've got a couple of volunteer teams that you may not know of. One is the Feed the Heroes team. Consistently and faithfully for the last 2 years have been bringing snacks and food to our heroes, led by Carolyn Gorey, a great volunteer team leader. Just an amazing, awesome thing. There's another volunteer team. You may not have ever even heard about or know about this, but there's a group of ladies that would get together every week and go pick up food from the food shelf, bring it over to Riverway School, pack it in backpacks so kids who otherwise wouldn't have a meal would have food over the weekend. Amazing, great stuff that has everything to do with outward focus, moving forward, and being a community that being a church community that cares about its community. Another area where we've done good, I'm just highlighting this fact that we haven't been yucky in a lot of areas during this experiment, is giving. We talked about this a lot last week, so I won't totally rehash it, but as a church, our per capita giving per person is above average. In terms of church plant and what other church plant leaders and the books I read and blogs and things like that, we're doing good in terms of per capita giving. We've added 4 new pastoral staff members, Pastor Rick and Pastor Janet as the campus pastors here in Winona 7, Pastor Ashley, who's the pastor of our children's ministry, and Pastor Christy, pastor of our students ministry. We've never had more than one pastor before in the history of this experiment or before. And so just areas where we're doing really well. But there's always a but. I think there's some areas where we have slipped into status quo a little bit, and they're probably not fun to hear about, but we're talking about this today, so it's appropriate that we bring them up. In terms of our numerical attendance, you may or may not know this, we've been the same size, our Sunday morning attendance, for the last year. Compass Church kind of trended upward and has been having lots of successes, but we reached 100 people on Sunday morning about a year ago, and we've been kind of stuck there. And it's a barrier in church world, but I feel like maybe it's an area where we've kind of gotten okay with status quo. Another area that I think maybe where we've slipped a little bit into status quo or maybe even stagnancy is with our P3 process. P3 is the process that we use to invite people and tell people about Compass Church. It stands for pray for somebody. Don't just go cold calling on somebody's door that you don't know. Pray for them. Target them specifically in your life, your coworkers, your friends, your employees, and pray for them first. Like, God bless this person. God open this person's heart for me to do what's next, which is build a relationship with this person. I believe that we need to have the permission to speak permission to ask into people's lives, and building relationships has to do with that. And then invite. Not just invite to church, although certainly that's a part of it, but invite to coffee, invite to bowling. And I think we've just slipped into status quo. We're not hearing about the wins of someone's P3 coming, although you're going to meet someone today that's a product of P3. I think that's an area in church where we could do better. And then finally, an area where I feel like we've slipped a little bit is in new volunteer teams and new outreach teams. We've got some amazing teams that are killing it every single week and every single month at Compass, but we haven't started a new team in forever. And I think if we're really going to impact our community, if we're really going to be a growing community, that's something that we need to be aware of. A lot of times in church world, you'll hear pastors or speakers say that, healthy things grow. And that's true. But not all growth is always healthy. If you've ever had a tumor or a pimple, you know that not all growth, not all things that grow on your body are healthy. Pastor Rick and I have an ongoing joke about this ingrown hair on my neck. Fortunately, you can't see it because it's like not red and glaring anymore. But it's like, man, there's some things that grow on my body that I wish weren't growing. So not all growth, if we're talking about waistlines or egos, there's things that grow that aren't healthy. But at the end of the day, healthy organizations and healthy individuals, which is what make up healthy organizations, they grow. Maybe not in all areas at the same time, but they do grow. And so we want to be a growing organization. And our plan, this is our strategy and has been since day one. Our plan, our vision to become a loving, giving, growing community is to equip and empower the people of our community to love, give, and grow. Maybe it's simplistic. Maybe it should be more wordy or like 4 paragraphs. I don't know. But this is what we're about. Believing that if our leadership, our elders, our pastors, our volunteer team leaders equip and empower our congregation to love, to give, and to grow, then we will automatically and naturally become a loving, giving, and growing community. And so that's what we're about. And when it comes to becoming a growing community, we've got a slide for this. The 3 areas that we really hope to empower you to grow in are growth spiritually, growth relationally, and growth in Christian character. And so this is what we're about in terms of becoming a growing community. I just want to take just a few brief moments to talk about each of these areas as an encouragement to kind of and challenge at the same time to the areas that I feel like as individuals we all need to be growing in so we can become a growing community. The first is growing up spiritually. So we talk about this as growing up, growing out, relational, and growing down in Christian character. Growing up spiritually. 1 Peter chapter 2 says, like newborn babies, crave spiritual milk so that by it you may grow up in your salvation now that you've tasted that the Lord is good. Growing up spiritually has everything to do with your relationship with God. And at Compass Church, we believe that Christianity is not a religious activity. It's actually an intimate, real relationship with the God of the universe through his Son, Jesus Christ. That's where it all begins. And that we have the ability, because this is a spiritual relationship, to crave this spiritual nourishment that comes from intimacy with our Father. And in that, we can grow up and mature spiritually. That's why we're talking about this as a growing up kind of thing. God is up, so to speak, in heaven. He's everywhere. But, we want to grow up in God, and it begins with Jesus Christ. So if you've never become a Christian before, I want to encourage you to do that today. And we do this every week, so don't be weirded out. But, we believe, that following Christ is the most important thing you could ever do as an individual for your entire life. And it's very simple. It begins with a prayer of faith and belief that, I'm a sinner, and apart from God's saving grace, I'm doomed to an eternity of separation from God. And with one simple acknowledgement of faith, Jesus, I need you. I can't do it without you. Come and be my Savior. Come and be my Master. I want to live for you forever. You can become a Christian. And so if you want to do that today, I want you to do 2 things. First of all, mark your Connect card. I want to begin a relationship with Christ. Or you'll notice there's also a spot. If you're not ready, I need to consider it more, because as I said, Compass is a safe place to belong until you believe. But if you want to do that today, mark your card and then grab one of these books. A lot of times I think in churches people say, hey, become a Christian, raise your hand, say the prayer. and then just kind of leave you alone at that. This book is our effort to not just give you some kind of free gift, woohoo, although we are celebrating that you become a Christian. It's literally a how-to manual about what it looks like to be a Christian in the very first week. It's very practical. Day 1, day 2, day 3. So grab one of those. And congratulations. We ask you to mark your card because I want to call you. I want to check in with you. I want to follow up with you if you want to make that relationship today. But that's where growing up spiritually begins. It begins with following Christ. And then what happens as you have access because of a regenerated spirit to a relationship with God that you couldn't have before becoming a Christian, your relationship and your intimate connection with him begins to grow over time, or at least that's what we think should happen. That's what we want to happen. And if you think about it like this, it might help. What does it mean to have a growing relationship with Jesus Christ? What does it mean to grow? It doesn't mean you have to come to church more. Although we believe in being in church, we believe in being connected. It doesn't mean you have to, do more things. It doesn't mean that you have to even give more, or I would say even read your Bible more, although that's a great way to become spiritual. What it means is that your friendship and your intimacy with God increases just like it would with a real relationship. Everybody, for just a second, close your eyes and picture in your mind your BFF. If you don't know what a BFF is, that stands for best friend forever. If you don't have one, picture me. I'll be your BFF, okay? Hopefully you have one, though. You've got a best friend. Can you see him in your mind? Everybody? Okay, it's like, I know, it wasn't that hard of an assignment. Okay, can you see him? You got him? Okay, you can open your eyes. As you think about your BFF, think back to the first moment you met them. The first time you encountered them. Maybe it was in the lobby here at Compass. Maybe you met them on the playground. A lot of times guys meet their BFFs because they got in a fist fight with them on the playground or something, and then they became BFFs forever. I don't know, everybody's different, but your relationship with your bestie wasn't the same when you first met them as it is today. It's far more intimate today. It's far closer today. You share things today. You talk about things today. You're more connected intimately today, hopefully, than ever in the past. At least maybe, or they shouldn't be your BFF. I don't know. Maybe you need a new one. But that's very much like growing up spiritually in God. That tomorrow, prayerfully, my relationship with Jesus and my relationship with God is stronger and more intimate than it was today, and that hopefully today I'm stronger, more intimate than I was yesterday, and we should all be growing up spiritually, and it's not something that ever ends. It's not a place where we ever get to a point and say, I'm there, I grew up spiritually, now what? It's something that's ongoing. The next area of growth that we want to empower and equip you in is growing out relationally. Hebrews 10:25 says, let us not neglect our meeting together. A lot of times we use this verse to talk about coming to church, which is true, but it's also true of relationships. Let us not neglect meeting together as some people have done, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of Jesus coming is drawing near. I believe that we need to not stop growing in our relationships with people inside the church and not stop growing in our relationships with people outside the church. And that happens because we meet together, because we spend time together, because we have coffee together and barbecues together. Pastor Rick and Jana had a barbecue on Friday because they're intentionally doing this thing, not giving up meeting together in order to grow out relationally. And every one of us has a responsibility to grow out in our relationships because here's the deal. Having 1 to 2 friends forever that you only ever talk to, only ever hang out with, it's very intimate, it's very stable, and it's very safe, but it is also very dangerously close to stagnation and status quo. My dad used to sing me a song. I don't know if this is like a real song from the 70s, because my dad is from the 70s, or if he's just something he made up, but I'll sing it to you and you can email me later. Make new friends and keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. Anybody ever heard that before? Okay, so he didn't just make that up. It's very possible with my dad that he just made it up. But, okay, so that's a real song. So I'm not saying 1 to 2 great friends that are your besties, that's a bad thing or a sinful thing. Not at all. They're great. But don't stop with just these 1 or 2. Make new relationships. Go out and find people. When is the last time you met somebody new at Compass? When is the last time you met somebody new in the community? As a pastor, I hear this all the time. I just don't know anybody new. I just don't know anybody. Baloney. every week we meet somebody new. Every week we run into someone new at the cash register, at the gas station, in our book club, whatever. And so we have to have an intentional desire to keep growing out in our relationships and not be stagnant. Now, I feel like when we do that, our community grows. The third way that we want to equip and empower you to grow is to grow down in Christian character. And this one is a little bit potentially like, what does that mean, Pastor? I get it. I grow up in God. I grow out in my relationships. What does it mean to grow down in Christian character? There's 2 verses that the Apostle Paul included in his letter to the church in Corinth that I think bookend this idea about growing down in Christian character. You see them on the screen, 1 Corinthians 15:34. Think carefully about what is right and stop sinning. That is definitely an area we need to grow in as we become Christians. We need to learn how to stop sinning. And then the other side of that, 1 Corinthians 6:12, says just because something is technically legal doesn't mean that it's spiritually appropriate. And if I went around doing whatever I thought I could get by with, I'd be a slave to my whims. Another translation of 6:12 says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial to me. And so let me talk about this. Growing in character, growing down and having roots of Christian character, it applies to the black and white sin areas of life. For example, you can become a Christian today, mark your card, follow Christ, or have become a Christian in years past, and walk down to Quick Trip when church is over and steal a pack of gum, like straight up, like cameras off, anybody looking? Slip it in. It's a sin. Stealing is a sin. If you didn't know, and then one thing you got out of today too, stealing is a sin. You could go do that and still be a Christian. It wouldn't jeopardize your Christianity. But I believe that growing down in Christian character means that, that at some point you should stop stealing. Amen? Do we agree with that? If you don't agree with that, you should come and see me after. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But stop. Don't sin. If you're a Christian, stop sinning. Make an effort to grow in that area. God, help me. I can't stop stealing. I need your help. It's like black and white. I shouldn't do it. I want to stop doing it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't be a Christian. It doesn't mean that you can't come to Compass, but it's an area that we think we should grow in. The other part of that is growing in areas that aren't black and white. Like stealing is an area we would all say it's not okay. There's other areas in our life that we face as Christians that are part of culture, that are just part of doing life, that what might be wrong for someone might not be wrong for somebody else. What someone else might say, I just don't do that because of my relationship with Jesus or because of the choice I've made. Someone else might say, I've made a choice. It's okay. I call these gray areas. We're actually going to do a whole series of messages later in the fall about these gray areas. But an example, just to kind of bring it home, might be, the ratings of the movies or the video games, the movies that you watch or the video games you play, where I might say, I don't watch that rating of movie, I don't play that rating of video games. You may say, I do, and it's not appropriate for someone to say to someone else, that's wrong. You can't do it because I've decided not to do it. This is a gray area, and we all get to grow in these areas, and growing in the area of Christian liberty, or these gray areas, means that I change my perspective from what I can't do or shouldn't do, like stealing, it's black and white, I shouldn't do it, to what I choose to do or not do. This is what growing in Christian character looks like. I choose, because of my relationship with Jesus, to watch, drink, eat, smoke, go to these kind of places, knowing that I would do it with Jesus right with me. Maybe in your life right now you're growing through some things where you're like, man, I'm doing some things that I know they're maybe not totally wrong, black and white, but I'm not sure if I would invite Jesus to do them with me. It's okay. It's just an area you need to grow in. We all need to grow, and we could talk more and more about that. One thing about Christian character, growing in Christian character, that I just want to highlight before I invite Corey Prolo down, who's going to share a little bit with us about her growth experience. It is the Holy Spirit's job to encourage us and teach us about how to grow. It is not the job of the peanut gallery. You can come make your way down, Corey. I think that was your cue. The lights went off there. So, the Holy Spirit convicts us and teaches us lovingly and reminds us about areas we need to grow. The peanut gallery, if you don't know what the peanut gallery is, it came out of like 1940s vaudeville, where the cheap seats were up in the gallery, and they could only, here you go, come on over here. They could only serve peanuts. because that was what's cheap. And those in the peanut gallery would heckle and they would throw peanuts. And so oftentimes there's a peanut gallery in church world that says you can't, you shouldn't, you're wrong. And it's not the job of the peanut gallery to help us grow in Christian character. It's a job of the Holy Spirit. So I invited Corey to come and share with us a little bit because, number one, she is a product of our P3 process. Someone invited you to Compass Church. You probably remember who that is. Chelsea. You can share that with us. Pastor Rick, can we borrow your microphone there? And so that's very appropriate and applicable as we talk about growth. I've also seen in Corey's life this growth experience happen in a few different areas, spiritually and relationally and also in Christian character. So we're just going to talk about those three things. Tell us about the experience of being invited to church, that your kind of P3 process on the backside of it.
Well, I was invited by Chelsea almost a little over a year ago. And it's been great ever since. So she definitely, I have her to thank for being here.
Very cool. And how would you say you've grown spiritually? How has your relationship with God grown since being at Compass?
Well, I've always had a spiritual connection. I guess the growth part of it is just coming back to that relationship with God that I kind of let go. Things happen in life and you just kind of blame him for it sometimes, and so I'm glad I'm back.
Grown back into relationship, kind of a recommitment thing. Yes. Are you tight with Jesus now?
I am.
Nice.
I am.
Praise.
We're tight. Besties.
How have you grown relationally since being at Compass?
Oh my goodness. I have made so many friends here. It's amazing. I mean, I look out and I have done something with almost everybody here. So it's great. Before, I just, like you said, you kind of stay in your group. You have your friends, and that's who you stay with, and you kind of just go along with that, and it's good, but it's not great. And so definitely getting new relationships is awesome.
Cool.
Learning a lot.
Corey also led our single moms group to the single moms retreat this week. So, in terms of growing in relationships, she's not only growing, she's leading in relationships. Okay, final question as it pertains to what we're talking about. How have you grown down in Christian character? Are there some areas that, I know it's kind of a very personal, maybe either some black and white sin areas or some gray areas that you've grown in since being here?
This is a hard one. Mm-hmm. Growing down, I think just overall, in my whole thought process, thinking about what I should and shouldn't do, what's right, what's wrong, that kind of thing is kind of, it's coming. I'm still kind of in that gray area. I haven't gotten to, this and that, but it's coming along, and it's great that I'm here. I originally started coming for my kids, and I think I got more out of it than they have. So, do
you feel safe to grow in Christian character?
Oh my gosh, yes.
You feel
that's awesome.
Like there's a peanut gallery throwing stuff at you, saying you're not doing it right, you're not doing it fast enough?
No, I think in any kind of situation, when you're with people that believe different things, and you're going to have confrontations. You're going to have, this person did this, and, that's with anything. But the love triumphs over everything,
cool.
And working things out. And so it's been great.
Awesome. It's a privilege to have you here as part of our family. So give it up for Corey. All right. As we wrap up, just kind of a couple questions to close out the day here. You can leave the lights on. As Pastor Rick said, there's these puzzle pieces out in the lobby. This is the last week we're going to have them out. And so certainly it's not really, we're asking to pledge more or even although we'd love to, say, hear you say, I want to sack, God's calling me to do this. This is really more of an informational piece, so our elders can plan, attendance and giving. They're just hard things to project. And so we want to project into the future kind of where we're at in terms of fiscal solvency and what can we do the same as we have done during this experiment. What do we need to change? And so if you would you don't have to write your name on it, but please, before you go, take one of these, fill it out. It's just 2 simple questions. What is my giving, kind of average giving commitment per week or month that I plan on? And how many people am I going to pursue and bring to Compass over the next 18 months? That will really give us, as an elder board, a lot of information to help plan. Please don't take these home with you, because what we really like to do is put them all together and frame them and put them up in our op center. So what will you do to give? And who will you bring? That's my one question for you this morning. And then